Like I said, there are women who still don't think that it's abortion. They don't realize that the time frame that they're talking about here, the baby's nervous system forming, the heart beginning its beats, baby's face, arms, leg distinguishable, and the child's ears, fingers, toes formed by 7 weeks. Now, this will be important here when we talk a little bit about what's going on at Planned Parenthood. Now, deaths associated with RE46, I'm just going to briefly go through these. I've got a fact sheet on this in National Right to Life if you want to look at it. There have been women who've died of heart attack, a woman who died from a special, unique infection called Clostridium sordelia. That one thing that's happened with this is this is something really, really surprising that people don't get. When you have a surgical abortion, what happens? You experience great pain, cramping, bleeding, gastrointestinal distress, and all the rest. And so that's what happens when your abortion happens. What happens when you have an infection from Clostridium sordelii? You have pain, cramping, bleeding, gastrointestinal distress. Seems like the same. You don't realize, so the question is, and this is the case with some of these women here, they didn't realize that they had a deadly infection. And when they came to get treatment, there was no way to deal with it. It was too late. Sometimes these come with fevers, but sometimes they don't. So you don't know that you have an infection? And Holly Patterson here, she went back to the doctor a couple of days after she'd had RE46 to get checked out. They looked at her, they gave her more pain medication, sent her back home. She came back 3 days later and died. I'm saying is that there's a fundamental complication, fundamental problem in this whole thing about even identifying and treating infections. A couple women bled to death, and another woman died of a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. The woman on the top is Nadine Wikowiak. The blonde-haired young woman is Holly Patterson, and the young lady down at the bottom is Rebecca Tellberg. So these are real people. What did Planned Parenthood do? Well, first, one of the things they did was they said, okay, we don't think there's any sort of causal connection. A couple of these women, I don't know if you saw there, actually were Planned Parenthood patients. Holly Patterson was, and I can't remember if it was Vivian Tran, but anyway, and maybe even more than that. But they would say, okay, we're not going to admit that there's any causal connection between taking RE46 and having dying of an infection. But they said what we're going to do in March of 2006, we're going to announce that we're going to drop the vaginal administration of misoprostol. Remember we told you the second drug that caused, they were saying there was some concern that perhaps women were introducing the bacteria into their system by doing that. And that was in fact something that they had done that was not what the FDA had told them to do. So they had already done that. Actually, there's some concern that RU46 or misoprostol or both simply have one of these sort of side effects of the medications is to suppress a woman's immune system. So it may be several factors going on here. They cut off the deadline, so they moved it back to I think 8 weeks instead of 9 weeks, but they're back up to 9 weeks now. You can look on any of the websites, and they're doing 9 weeks again. And then this was just last year. They published a study saying that after they had switched from the vaginal administration of the misoprostol to buccal, which is sort of putting it under your tongue, or the administration, in March of 2006, infections dropped from 69 out of 77,000 to 25 out of 166,000. They added prophylactic antibiotic in July of 2007, and it dropped to 5 out of 116,000. So now they're saying heroic. But let's ask some questions here. First of all, how well were these patients tracked? So you come in, women come in, they receive this, they get the RE46, they take the misoprostol. Do they come back? Some do, but I guess. But how do they know? How do they know for sure? I'm not sure they're able to contact some of the women. Another thing is, for problems with prophylactic antibiotics, you can trigger unnecessary allergic reactions. It raises the cost of procedure. And there's just the general thing about the antibiotic resistance. It aids the growth of what you call superbugs. It's very interesting about this. You realize who are the ones that were making these arguments? This was actually the abortion industry. Other people in the abortion industry were upset that Planned Parenthood had done this. because they they were still continuing to use vaginal self-administration, and they didn't like the way they did this. But the question is, what about the women who died while Planned Parenthood was ignoring the FDA protocol? What's going on there? And we also know that there are infections and hemorrhaging still occurring at Planned Parenthood and some other places. The numbers had supposedly dropped, but they're still happening. And by the way, those numbers were way higher than anybody had been led to believe that we thought were happening with infections. Now, in some states, parents of teens must be notified or give consent unless the judge grants a bypass for an abortion. Women must be given information on abortion's risks, the child's stage of development, alternatives to abortion. There may be a 24 or 48-hour waiting period or reflection period, and staff are required to notify authorities of any indication of a crime, such as statutory rape, sexual assault, or incest. Planned Parenthood says these things. They say that they trust women, that they tell women about their options, that they comply with state and federal laws, and that women can trust Planned Parenthood. But the truth is they offer limited options for pregnant patients. We talked about that. How many of them are offering prenatal care? How many of them are offering infertility treatment? How many of them are doing adoption referrals? They have consistently opposed parental involvement and right-to-know laws. We now have evidence that they have overlooked evidence of what may have been seemed to have been evidence of statutory rape, and they either display great ignorance or duplicity in regard to basic fetality. Let's look at this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to simply refer to some of these. You may have seen this whole series of videotapes that have been done, have gone into Planned Parenthood clinics and with a hidden camera. And real Planned Parenthood clinics talk to real Planned Parenthood staffers, and this is what they would happen. And just I'll look at just a couple of these are representative, but there was in spring of 2007, Los Angeles, unreported claim of statutory rape. Same thing in June of 2008 in Bloomington, Indiana. And they were directed across the state line to avoid parental consent law. Indianapolis, same thing. Birmingham, unreported claim of statutory rape. We'll talk about this one in just a minute. Memphis, unreported claim of statutory rape. Phoenix, Tucson, both same thing. And in September of last year, Appleton, patient gave misinformation about abortion and fetal development. And in September, same time in Milwaukee, misinformation about fetal development. Just real quickly, we'll look at these. Spring of 2007, Los Angeles. Young woman visits Planned Parenthood, claims to be 15 and pregnant by a 23-year-old. The person at Planned Parenthood, so we still have to call police and they still have to talk to you, but we aren't going to force to do anything basically. But if I say, and we don't know what she said, that's different. She's Planned Parenthood, you could say you're 16. I could say 16, yes. So I just write 16. Well, just figure out a birthday that works. Okay, and I don't know anything. It's reported on Fox News and in Salon. Bloomington, Indiana, claiming to be 13 months in abortion. She mentions her boyfriend is 31. Planned Parenthood tells her in the state of Indiana, when anyone has intercourse, they're age 13 or younger, it has to be reported to Child Protective Services. And there's some discussion, and she says, okay, I didn't hear the age. I don't want to know the age. It can be reported as rape, and that's child abuse. So if I just say I don't know who the father was, but he's one of the guys at school or something, right. Birmingham, Alabama. This is so small type, and I doubt anybody except maybe in the first row with a telescope can read it, but I'll try to read it to you quickly. Birmingham. Young woman claiming to be 14 is seeking an abortion, but wants a way around the Alabama law requiring her parents' consent. She says, and what if my boyfriend gives consent? Well, how old is your boyfriend? Is everything here confidential? Yeah, I can't say anything. He's 31. Okay, he won't be able to do that because he doesn't have the same last name. Well, he could get the same last name. No, you can't do that. Is it a problem about my boyfriend? As long as you considered having sex with him, there's nothing we can truly do about that. He said he could get into big trouble. He could, especially if your parents found out he's 31. Sometimes does bend the rules a little bit. Whatever you tell us stays within these walls. We can't disclose any information to anybody. In the video, this counselor seems to be telling the woman that the signature of an older sister that's the age of 18 or someone with the same last name could function as a substitute for the parental consent so Planned Parenthood could perform the abortion of the minor in Alabama. A subsequent state investigation uncovered 9 cases where minors received abortions without the proper verification of parental consent, prompting the state to put the clinic on probation. That's in Pediatric Week and also on Fox News.